Okay, hello, and thank you so much for attending the WRDS Area 49 event, and thank you for checking out this video. This is just a recap of what we looked at today in the event to give you a sense of kind of what we talked about, so I wanted to share more with you. This is an overview of NotebookLM, what I think is one of the most powerful tools that you can use, not only in first-year writing, but for anything that you're doing at UNC Charlotte, and I wanted to go through again with you and sort of show you what NotebookLM is all about. So this is where you can go to log into NotebookLM. If you just Google UNC Charlotte NotebookLM, you can find a link to log in here. We gained access to this on Thursday, January 9th of 2025. NotebookLM is a Google application, so it runs on Gemini, and you have full enterprise access to this as a UNC Charlotte faculty member or student. What enterprise access means is that this AI tool is data protected and your student privacy is protected. What data protection means is that the information that you put into NotebookLM, like your own writing or the sources that you capture here, those sources and information are not being fed into Google's LLM training for future LLM models. So the information that you contribute here is not going to train future LLMs. On top of that, as a student or a faculty member, when you put your information into the current LLM and ask the bot, ask the chat, ask the AI to do things with it, your student data, like your name, is stripped off of that and not captured anywhere. So privacy and data protection and privacy, very important in these enterprise accounts. We pay for those as a university, and it's important that you try to use the tools that we offer. So you can click on NotebookLM, and it will take you to this screen, and then you can click on Try NotebookLM and make sure that you log in with your UNC Charlotte credentials, and it will take you into your NotebookLM interface, where you will see all of the notebooks that you have created. And if this is the first time you're visiting here, you'll just see the Create New, and you can click on that to get started. So we're going to create a new one. I'm going to walk you through the whole thing here. So Create New is where you want to be. I'm going to adjust a couple of settings here because my screen looks a little dark. So let me just fix that real quick. That's better. Okay. So this is what NotebookLM looks like. 3 tabs or columns. It's a very slick interface, and on the left you'll see a column called Sources, in the middle a column called Chat, and on the right a column called Studio. And this is where all the work will occur, in these 3 columns. First thing that we're going to do is title our notebook something. So if you click on the tab up here, it says Untitled. We're going to change this to First Year Writing Notebook, and we're going to call this Critical Reading, Synthesis, and Critical Reflection. Because those are the 3 sort of core skills or habits of first-year writing that we're going to be focusing on how to empower here in this notebook. So we're going to call it that. Okay. So what is NotebookLM? It is a very powerful tool that can really help you do all kinds of learning and all kinds of things in your courses. We're going to be focusing on how we can use it in first year writing. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to focus over here on this Sources tab. You've heard a lot about sort of the decline of reading, right, in recent times. Nobody knows how to read anymore. Okay. There's information and there's sources and there's research that has come out that has pointed to this, and it's concerning, right? How people just are having trouble with what we are calling reading in 2025. Okay, I'm a big reader. I'm a big writer. I wrote some books. I love to read. I don't read as much as I used to. I don't read fiction as much. I've been reading a lot of books about AI, but reading just, I don't know, maybe it's just not quite as easy to come by these days. I don't know. So, or maybe the metrics we're using to assess reading, to figure out why or why not people are reading, who knows? Who knows the reasons? Maybe it's got to do with social media or screens or video first platforms or how we're engaging with content and where we're engaging with it. Whatever the reason, reading is still really important, okay? And there are tools that exist and there are ways to look at reading that are very helpful. And this is one of those tools. I think the mistake that we're making right now is that we are sort of saying that AI is going to cut out the need for reading. Sure, if we give up the ghost on reading, then of course it is, right? Of course it will. But we don't need to do that. We don't need to acquiesce to AI is going to replace the need for reading. I don't think we need to do that, right? I think reading is still awesome and it can still be amazing. These tools are reshaping perhaps how we think about how we go about reading. Okay, I've been talking too much. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So what do we do here? Let's say we're in a first-year writing course like the one that I teach. A source that I often assign my students is a book, if you will, called Bad Ideas About Writing, edited by Cheryl Ball and Drew Lowe. This is an open source book, okay? What that means is it's freely available on the web. I assign this because I don't want my students to have to buy a textbook. And I love this book because it's full of articles about first-year writing concepts, things like techniques, grammar, style, what is good writing, who are good writers, what is genre, who are writing teachers, what is digital technology, and it's kind of wrapped up in this framework of bad ideas about writing, right? So it's a book about demythologizing things that we think about when we think about writing. So I love this. I use this book in my first-year writing courses, and I think it's really good. It's a 382-page PDF document. And I will take, parts of this and I'll say, okay, go check out the article on page 24 about first-year composition should be skipped. That's a bad idea. Go check out the article on page, 38 by Ellen Carrillo. Reading and writing are not connected. That's a bad idea. And I'll ask students to read those pieces. Okay, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Fine. But what else can we do now? Now that we have Notebook, what can we do with this? I'll show you. Let's copy the link to this PDF. We're going to copy this PDF link, and we're going to go back to our Notebook, and we're going to add it as a source to our Sources tab. We can do that by clicking Add Source, and as you can see here, we can add all kinds of different types of sources. Google Docs, Google Slides, so if you've got some PowerPoints from a class you want to maybe add, links to websites, YouTube videos, and just copy and pasted text. So we're going to add this as a link to a website, which is essentially a link to a PDF document, and we're going to insert that here as a source. The Notebook is going to kind of read it. A few seconds. It's going to kind of read and synthesize all 382 pages of that. I'll sip my coffee while it's doing that. Okay, so what do we end up with? We end up with one source in our Sources tab. In our version of Notebook, you can have 50, that's 50 sources in the Sources tab. And in the center, in the Chat tab here, we've got First Year Writing Notebook, Critical Reading Synthesis and Reflection, which was our title. And we've got a little synopsis of this book. Bad Ideas About Writing is a collection of essays by writing scholars challenging common misconceptions about writing and its instruction. The book aims to spark debate and offer research-backed alternatives to harmful myths perpetuated in schools, popular culture, and society. The essays cover a wide range of topics, including rhetoric, style, grammar, genre, assessment, technology, and the role of teachers. It emphasizes the importance of understanding writing as a complex, contextualized practice and encourages readers to rethink traditional approaches to writing education. By debunking these bad ideas, the authors hope to foster more effective and equitable writing pedagogy. Okay, that's a good synopsis. All right, that's good. So, can we actually read the source ourselves, right? Yes, we can. It's in here. It's in the Notebook. Okay? Not only that, but we've got a nice little summary, and we've got some key topics listed. So, myths, good writing features, digital technology, assessing student writing, and qualities of good writers. And we've got the whole thing here, right? I think it's important to note, though, that this doesn't look that good, right? Because it's not designed for us. This is designed for us to read. So, like the authors designed this text. This is much nicer. Print this out, or read it on your Kindle, or read it on your iPad, or whatever. Like, I like to print things out and hold it in my hand and put little sticky notes and underline things with my pen. I quite enjoy that. You know, I'm like 43, so like I kind of like that. But like, you might not. So whatever you like when it comes to reading, do that. But I think it's important to note that this text, this book, in its PDF form, was intentionally designed with audience in mind, with some accessibility features in mind, whereas this was intended for an AI. So you certainly can read this, and it's good that it's in the notebook, and I'll show you why in a second. And you can certainly just sit in the notebook and read your sources, just like you always have, okay? Like, reading is still a thing, okay? AI has not gotten rid of reading, okay? Because look, the words are there. You can read the words, all right? So choose reading. It still exists, okay? And we should be doing it. You know, no one is telling you not to read, okay? I fully support reading. Reading is awesome, and you should do it. But there's so much more that we can also do, right? So like, writing knowledge transfers easily. Again, right, that's a myth, right? And so what is that? Why is that a bad idea about writing it? You know, by Ellen Carrillo here. You can read this. So let's just say we're looking at one of these articles, right? Reading and writing are not connected, one that I mentioned earlier. Let's just say we wanted to read through this a little bit. All right. Since the 1950s, we've been hearing that Johnny can't read. In 1975, Newsweek informed us that Johnny can't write either. Over the years, a range of reasons for this illiteracy have been offered. Most recently, technology has been named one of the culprits. So exactly what we're talking about right now, right? As they get a little older, students begin to develop an awareness of genres or types of text, and study of phonics is also further reinforced by a concurrent focus on reading and writing, et cetera, et cetera. So we can read through this, and as we're reading this, we can hop over here to the Studio tab, okay? And in the Studio, there is a button called Add Note. So if we click the Add Note button, you'll notice the chat kind of goes away for a second. We don't need that right now. And we can actually write down notes as we are reading. A classic concept when it comes to reading critically. We can read the text and we can take notes. All right, so nothing new under the sun here, right? We can read and take notes. So what are we learning about here? We're learning about, you know, let's see. Although writing is more often thought of as a creative act, reading is just as creative. Okay, so this idea of reading is creative. What does that mean? When one writes, one is creating meaning by putting words and ideas together. When one reads, the same thing is happening. Although someone else has already put the words and ideas together, the reader interacts with those and creates meaning by bringing her perspective, personal experiences, and background to what literary scholar Luis Rosenblatt has called the transaction between the text and the reader. Ooh, that's an interesting idea. Transaction between text and reader. Fascinating. That personal transaction with the text has affected how each reader creates meaning. When reading and writing are taught alongside each other in the college-level classroom, students can gain practice experiencing and realizing and opportunities to create meaning not just through writing, but through reading everything from print text to art to websites to national news events, all of which they will continue to engage beyond school. So, reading everything. From art to news to texts, read it all. All right, so I'm just taking notes about this little paragraph right here as I am reading it, which I think is fascinating. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that paragraph into my notes. And you'll notice because of the way the PDF is sort of structured, it kind of did this little thing with the putting these little dashes. So you just got to have to deal with that. Okay, so I'm note-taking, I'm reading. We do this all the time, right? This is a best practice in critical reading, right? Okay, great. So let's collapse our note view for a second, collapse our source view for a second. Now we're back to our main view here. Okay, so now I've got this little note, and you can do this as much as you want. You can take as many notes as you want. You can take a note on a lecture. You can take a note on a video you're watching. You can take notes to your heart's content. Now, I've got my note. And I can convert my note to a source. This is crucially important. Converting a note to a source. Okay? So I'm going to convert this note to a source, and it's going to take my own writing, my own ideas and thoughts, the things right out of my own brain that I just wrote down, to a source. Okay? I'm going to back up 1 second because I forgot to do something earlier. You'll notice that my source list over here is just a URL link that is, I don't really know what that means. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to rename this. I'm going to rename this to the actual name of the source, so Bad Ideas About Writing. And I want to go here and grab the actual people's names so I can just keep track of everything, edited by these folks right here. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there like that, just so I can keep track of that a little bit better. And then I've got my own notes here, right? You'll notice it has like a little like M down, like whatever that little icon means to indicate that it's my own note. That's my source there. Okay, so I've got my 382-page PDF book, and I've got my note. And now I've got two sources. Okay, you with me so far? Cool. What else can we do? Well, we can actually, what's so cool about NotebookLM is that you can direct the AI to sort of tell it what you want it to interact with. So I can deselect my source list, and then I can say, okay, I just want to pay attention to the PDF book. I don't want my notes in there right now. So I'm just going to select that, and I'm going to ask it to make me a study guide for that entire 382-page document. So just imagine for a second that we've got class coming up next week, and I want my students to read that article that we were just looking at from Carrillo about why nobody can read anymore. And before they read that, I want them to work on this study guide a little bit. Maybe not even the whole thing. Maybe I just want my students to become familiar with some terms, some important terms from the text. Well, here they are. Before you come to class next week, before you read the article, just go through these terms and make sure that you know what rhetoric is, what first-year composition means, what transfer means, what African-American language means, what writer's block means, what the elements of style are, intertextuality. Just review this glossary, okay? You don't need to get into the essay questions yet, but these might be useful for later in the course when we start thinking about some of that stuff. Having something like this before anyone even gets to the reading of the text is an incredible tool, okay? Like, if you just throw an article like this at a student and say, read it, without any sort of, like, ramp up to that, it's very intimidating. And this is a pretty accessible text. So imagine you give them, like, a full-on article, and, if you gave them this before the full thing, it's going to ease them into that a little bit and help them to kind of get where they need to be by the time they get to read it. So this might really help empower their sense of confidence to say, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. Like, I have what I need to get into the text. You can also create a briefing document. The briefing document is, again, an extremely helpful primer before you ask them to start reading something out of the actual article. So in this, you get some of the major themes, right? So rhetoric and writing process, myths and identity, language and grammar, writer's block. What's so important about Notebook is that you're not just going out to a fully open large language model like Copilot and Gemini and asking it, give me the themes of bad ideas about writing. You're focusing the AI on this one specific text. So it knows what you're looking at. And it's just super zoomed in. And that's so important because it focuses it here. It hones it into this one thing so that you know what it's looking at. So you can be the expert. So you can know, okay, I know this text like the back of my hand. I use it every semester. So that I know that what we're dealing with here is right. Really important. So this briefing document is really useful too. I'm going to convert that to a source. So now we've got these three sort of sources here that we're working with. Okay, really useful. And now what gets really cool, this is where the critical reading part really starts to kick off, is when we start to get into the middle section of NotebookLM, this chat, okay? Because here's where things really start to get interesting. Let's go back for 1 second to our note, right, that we were writing earlier. Reading is creative. What does that mean? transaction between text and reader. I was interested in this idea when I was reading the article to begin with, this idea of reading as a creative practice, transactional interactions between reader and text. I want to ask about that, okay? So I'm going to keep all my sources checked here because I want to talk. I want to talk to my sources. I'm going to say that again. I want to talk to my sources. This is new, okay? We've never been able to do this before. When we're talking about synthesis and critical reading, we've metacognitively been able to do this as writing studies scholars, as people who are interested in sort of this metacognitive practice of writing and thinking and critical synthesis, critical reflection, and all this stuff that we espouse in writing studies. We do this all the time. When we're reading, we are metacognitively having a conversation with the text, right? We're asking questions in our head. We're thinking about things as we're reading them. We're thinking about things as we're writing them. We're doing this in our head all the time. But to be able to externalize that process in a real way, this is brand new. And I think that's really important to hammer down on here, is that because of AI and because of tools like this, we are now entering this era where we can externalize metacognitive processes in a way that we've never been able to before. So let me demonstrate what I'm talking about here. We can literally talk to our sources, and we can talk to our texts, and we can talk to the things we're reading. So when I was reading Carrillo's piece about, let's go back and find that, just so we know what we're talking about here. So it was this part, right? Right around page 34. So reading and writing are not connected by Ellen Carrillo, right? So when I was, let's change our question here. In Ellen Carrillo's piece, reading and writing are not connected, she discusses this idea of reading creatively. What does she mean by that? In her essay, Reading and Writing Are Not Connected, Ellen Carrillo explains that reading is a creative act. Here's what Carrillo means by that. When writing, individuals create meaning by combining words and ideas, and the same process occurs when reading. Although the author has already assembled the words and ideas in a text, the reader engages with them, creating meaning by bringing their own perspective. This transaction results in different people taking away different things when reading. Reading is an active enterprise and writing's counterpart in the creation of meaning. Reading and writing should be taught together to allow students to gain experience in creating meaning through both. By focusing on active reading approaches, students can be prepared to be informed and engaged citizens. Okay. Do you see what I did there? Like, I had an inquiry question. I had a question about the reading that I had as I was reading it. I wrote it down in my notes, and then later I went back and I asked the text, almost like I was asking the author herself, because I didn't understand what she meant when she was talking about reading creatively. I asked a question and I got an answer. This has never been a thing before. This is new, okay, folks? Like, this is a new way to think about this, all right? So kind of mind-blowing in a way, okay? And it can actually, okay, so where did you get this? Like, where did this come from in the source? Oh, well, it's right here. This is a foundational theme of how best practice, right, is like, go back and show me where you got it from in the source. Well, there it is. That's where you're getting this answer from. It's right there, okay? There it is in the article, okay? What about this part about reading is an active enterprise and writing's counterpart in the creation of meaning? Well, that comes in right here. So this is absolutely kind of, I think, amazing. And so you can continue to talk to the source in this way. Like, what are some of the texts that we should be reading creatively? print text, art, websites, national news, images. How does Carrillo suggest we do this as writers and readers? And you can just continue on in this way. The more interest, like you can have a conversation with your piece of reading in this way. It's amazing to me. This is a new kind of reading, in my opinion. Like, so to allude back to what I said at the beginning, like, are we assessing reading in the right way? Like, if we're just asking like context questions, like what was the thing about? Like, I don't think we're not assessing it properly. Like, we need to be doing this. Like, I'm having a conversation with my piece of reading here, okay, in a way that is new. And so then we can take this and we can add all of these little conversations about the text to our notes. So now we have notes that we've created in collaboration with the text itself. We can add these notes as sources to our notebook to really hone in on specific parts of the text that we want to add as sources into our project, whatever we're creating, whatever we're writing. And it just is an entirely new way to interact with and think about how we're dealing with source material and with the thing that we're trying to read. Okay. Almost there. What about critical reflection? Okay, so let's say we've come to class, we've read the article, we've done this interaction, we are ready to go. Like, I have an entirely new understanding of this Ellen Carrillo piece. I've had a conversation with the article, I've immersed myself in it, I've come up with some really cool questions. I get to class, I get to my first year writing class, the instructor says we're going to spend 10 minutes first thing in class, we're going to write a little bit about, reading creatively. Okay, so just to save a little time here, I'm going to come up with some writing to demo this. So I come to class having prepared the reading, and I pull up my NotebookLM, and I want to do my writing right there in my NotebookLM. And the instructor says, okay, so what are your thoughts on creative reading? And I add a note to my NotebookLM, and I call this creative reading, my thoughts. And I do a little writing, okay? And here's what I come up with after about 5 minutes, 6 minutes in class, kind of doing a little in-class writing. And I've done this right here in my notebook, right? My notebook is everything, right? This is where I do everything for class. And I want to do a little critical reflection on this, right? I want to see how I can maybe think about this piece of writing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this little note that I just crafted, this little reflective writing, this little 500-word thing, and I'm going to convert that to a source. So you'll notice that it populates that over here. And I'm going to deselect everything else except for that thing I just wrote, and I'm going to refresh my chat. I'm going to do a new chat session with my Gemini. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, so I just wrote this short reflection. Can you give me some feedback on how this sounds? Specifically, is it clear and does it make sense? These are a little bit general questions for now, but we'll work on that. Once you share, I will review according to the source. Okay, so you'll notice what it didn't quite give me what I wanted because I only used the information specifically from my writing. So I need to be a little more specific with my prompt. So according to the source, reasons, creative. So I need to change what I've done a little bit here. I want this piece of writing to be a little more clear. And okay, so here let's change this. So I'm going to actually select this note from earlier, this note about, oh, whoops, sorry. Okay, so here is reading is creative. What does this mean? Transaction between text and reader. Okay, so this is my note about reading is creative. Oh, I selected the wrong note. That's why that didn't work. That's why I did that wrong. Sorry. So this was my reflection. So let's try that again. Sorry about that. Creative reading, my thoughts. So I'm going to select this, and I wrote this piece of writing about the concept of creative reading. Can you give me some feedback on this based on the concept of creative reading from Carrillo's piece, and provide some guidance on how I might incorporate those ideas more clearly into my writing. All right, and so what we're also going to grab here is this source that has to do with these topics. So we're going to integrate these two sources into my request for some more clarity on this topic in my own piece of writing. Based on the sources provided, here's some feedback on your piece about creative reading with suggestions for incorporating ideas from Carrillo's perspective. Your piece effectively captures the essence of creative reading as an active and imaginative process. You describe moving beyond surface level comprehension to engaging, etc., etc. To incorporate Carrillo's ideas more explicitly, you might consider the following. Emphasize the reader's role in creating meaning, discuss the transaction, acknowledge the multiplicity, etc., etc. Okay. I am an engineering student. Can you give me some specific suggestions on how to make my writing sound less informal? As you can see, it sort of offered me some specific ideas there. A little bit general. The author in the source uses like frequently. Overusing words such as like in your writing can make it sound less professional. Okay. Some specific suggestions there. Instead of telling me what to do, can you sort of explain why? And let's just see what it says. Instead of telling me, sort of explain why. Word choice, complete sentences, it kind of gives me more of a more overview there of exactly why. Okay, so I'm sort of, again, I'm talking to my own writing here. I'm sort of chatting with my writing, if you will. In my writing sample, what works and what doesn't? Based on the source about creative reading, here's an analysis of what works and what could be improved in your writing. Capturing the essence, personal interpretation, understanding different perspectives. What doesn't? Informal tone, lack of explicit content, limited discussion, limited active reading. To improve your writing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, one of the key things here is helping our students understand which parts of this they want to take and which parts they don't want to take. That's where the writing teacher comes in, okay? This is not the end-all, be-all, I don't need writing teachers anymore. This is a student can get something from this, but not everything. And this is a way to help them, again, metacognitively reflect on what their writing is doing and what else they might be able to think about what their writing is doing. The role of the writing teacher is still to help a student look at this and be like, okay, that might be a good suggestion, but maybe try this. Or maybe leave that behind because, remember, this is just like probability prediction. So that might not be what you want to do here. But this metacognitive concept of entering into a conversation with your own writing and with your sources is what I'm trying to demonstrate here, because this ability to talk to your writing this way is new and amazing. So then we can take this and say that as a note, and we got a lot going on with one source and a little bit of writing. And I think that's pretty impressive. And all of this is reading now, okay? This is what reading looks like now. This is what we need to be, I think, encouraging folks to do when we want them to read something. Because this gives us an entirely new perspective on what it means to critically read something, to be able to interact, to be able to analyze, to be able to synthesize, reflect, write about, and do it all right here in the context of this notebook. And then at the end of the day, there is like a little bit of a treat, a little bit of a dessert treat. We get this really neat thing called the audio overview. And so now we have the audio overview of our bad ideas about writing source. We can take a quick listen to this just to sort of see how it sounds.
Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we are going to be looking at those kind of sneaky bad ideas about writing that you might have picked up, over the years. Those things that you think are common sense, but might actually be holding you back as a writer. We've got some excerpts here from Bad Ideas About Writing. Should be a good one.
I think everybody's encountered some of these misconceptions at some point in their writing journey. It's amazing how they kind of persist. Even among, really experienced writers.
It really is. It's like those grammar rules that you swear are true from grade school, and then you find out that they're actually myths, completely made up.
Exactly. And speaking of things that we learned in school, let's tackle the 5-paragraph essay. Friend or foe? What do you think?
Okay, so I have to admit, I used to rely on that structure all the time. Like, it just felt safe. Intro, 3 points, conclusion, boom, done. But this book is making me rethink that whole thing.
It's interesting. And it goes beyond just being like too basic or something. The authors of this book argue that the 5-paragraph structure can actually reinforce a really passive way of learning. Like we're just depositing information instead of, actually engaging with it.
So it's more than just like a simple structure. It's actually shaping how we think about, arguments and ideas. That's kind of unsettling.
It is. They even compare it to Frere's banking model of education. Have you heard of that one?
I have. That's where knowledge is treated like a deposit instead of a process of discovery.
Right. And so the 5-paragraph essay.
So as you can see, that is a really, really kind of impressive audio overview of that entire source, which is actually 62 minutes long. It's an hour. So it's like a full episode of a podcast. It sounds really, really interesting. And we can do all kinds of things with that. We can download it. We can use it in whatever way that we want. We could upload it to YouTube and actually work with it. We could take it in our courses and we could make something out of it. We could edit it in an editor and kind of cut pieces through it. So there's more that we could even do with it than what we've even got here. So that's an overview of NotebookLM, and I hope you can start to see the potential for this tool, and the possibilities really extend even further than what we've got here. So my challenge, my call to action to you, as you've listened to watch this long video, is what can you do with this? Take this into your processes that you've already developed, whether it be in a first-year writing course or some other class that you're taking, and think about how this tool can really empower your critical reading, your synthesis, your critical reflection, whatever outcome you're trying to achieve. How can you use this tool not to replace that, not to undermine your reading capabilities, not to undermine what you're doing as a writer, not to replace those things, but to empower them? And remember that AI collaboration is collaborative. It's something that is in tandem with what you're thinking about and doing as a human being. It is not going to replace those core critical thinking and communication skills that we value, but instead it's going to give you a new lease on those skills. It's going to improve those skills if and only if you start to think about how to use these tools in the most effective ways. That's my goal, is to help you understand that AI doesn't have to be this thing that just makes you not think anymore, but instead makes you think more deeply. So thank you so much for looking at this, for thinking about this. I would encourage you to go try it. If you want more on this, send me an email sometime. You can find all that information in the notebook that you received in the presentation today. And thank you so much. My name is Justin Carey, and I will catch you next time.